I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off-road. The guy managed the group. He was like, what are you doing in this beautiful car? I'm like, I'm going off-road. He's like, are you sure? Because you can use one of ours. And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability, as well as its robust interior, are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Choose Yourself Network. Today on the James Altucher Show.
This is the idea that you want to live a life that's fully well-rounded. Like, there's so many free doctors that are available, like the light, the cold, the heat, sex, movement, sleep, all of these things. They're free as fuck. Like, we just got to utilize them and utilize them in a way that's going to support our organism, and we're going to have a way, way better life. You asked about where I was going next. So this is the foundation for the body and mind. Where I'm going next is the heart. And what about our connections with, other people? We got to connect with each other. We got to connect with ourselves. We got to really spend time doing the things that we love to do about life, not just doing the things that are going to get us to some mythical place somewhere in the future that we think we'll be happy when we get to.
I mean, I feel like just with that, I'm ready to go. I'm
own
ready
the day, James.
I'm going to own the day. I've got Aubrey Mark. Why can't I say your name? I've got Aubrey Marcus in the house. Aubrey, how's it going?
It's going good, man. How are you?
Good, Aubrey. So you're the CEO of Onnit, which Joe Rogan talks about incessantly. It's great. You sell all these great, I don't know what to call them, supplements, nutraceuticals, kettleballs, all these things for your health. You've put together this great book that's right in front of me, Own the Day, Own Your Life. I feel like each topic in this book is something individually I've covered with different guests on the podcast, but you concisely make it about the day. So it's not like, Hal Elrod has the miracle morning. Mm-hmm. You have one chapter, how to make the optimal morning, and you have a different twist on it than he does. Then you have whole thing on, sugar versus fat versus other things in your diet, which I've talked about with other guests. You have stuff about sex, about energy, about nutraceuticals. You have so many people who have been on the podcast. You mentioned Rich Roll's a good friend of the podcast, been on like a dozen times. But I'm so glad. I feel like your book is the Bible for how to live a day. Like from waking up to when you finally go to sleep, each component of the day, you sum up in an easy to do fashion what one should do. Yeah. So I've started doing it since I started reading your book.
Awesome.
I'm on my 3rd liter of water so far.
Awesome.
Probably a little too much water. I've been peeing all day. We're going to talk about your book in a second. We're going to talk and basically how you can own the day, own your life. And let me just say the subtitle: Optimized Practices for Waking, Working, Learning, Eating, Training, Playing, Sleeping, and Sex. And we're going to talk about Onnit also, which is your company. I remember there was an article in Forbes in 2016 that said you're up to 28 million in revenues. What's Onnit doing in revenues now?
I don't share those numbers, but
I'm not going to tell anybody.
We're in the realm of double that.
Okay,
Let's just
good.
say that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Is it profitable?
It is. I raised $110,000 to start the company and haven't taken outside investment of any significant form since. A couple athletes have bought in for little tiny pieces and things like that. But yeah, we've basically run this company from the ground up, pushed all in on a purchase order for Alpha Brain, and then sold through that with net 30 terms, and then sold through the next batch and sold through the next batch, just like a proper drug dealer flipping keys to 2 keys to 5 keys and making it work.
I like that. I like using the drug dealer analogy. And even that on my podcast, I've had like massive drug dealers, so I get the listeners will understand the business model. So I was going to delay talking about the book and Onnit for a second, but Alpha Brain, tell me about that. It's a nootropic. You have all these studies on the site that show it makes you smarter. Is it related to, you mentioned this one plant nootropic, Herpertia serrata, in the book on page 132 of the book?
Yeah, I think that's one of the core drivers of the mechanism of action of Alpha Brain. So really this came about because Joe Rogan and I were friends, and we were talking about the supplement that we wish existed, something that didn't exist at the time, a natural plant-derived supplement that was strong, that you could feel, that rivaled some of the feelings that you could get from a prescription, but was natural and didn't have those kind of side effects.
By prescription, do you mean like modafinil or Adderall?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to draw those direct references, but yeah, I mean, something that was potent enough that you knew when you took it, because a lot of the supplements you take for the brain, it's like, yeah, I think that maybe did something good. We wanted something that was convincing. And
yeah, like if I go in the store and get, I don't know, Ginko, Balboa,
yeah, you're not going to feel anything.
You can't tell anything.
It's
supposed
all
to improve your memory. Yeah, who knows what's going on. But you have statistical studies on Alpha Brain. Okay, so I interrupted you, but this Herpertia, how do you say it?
Herpertia serrata.
Yeah.
So that works on the acetylcholine system, and the acetylcholine is responsible for memory, focus, sharpness, and it's actually technically an acetylcholine esterase inhibitor. So acetylcholine esterase breaks down the acetylcholine in your brain, so it inhibits the enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine, therefore giving you more in your brain.
And what does acetylcholine do for the brain?
Yeah, so it's a neurotransmitter, and it's just responsible for that acuity, focus, sharpness. There's kind of 4 major neurotransmitters: serotonin, that feeling of well-being, that feeling of peace and love and happiness. MDMA activates the serotonin receptors. And then you're talking about GABA, which is something that alcohol activates. It's sleepy, it's relaxed, it's calming. And then you talk about dopamine. Everybody kind of knows what dopamine, that kind of the reward chemical, that kind of driving
chemical. What's the difference between dopamine and serotonin? I always forget.
Yeah, I mean, just 2 different neurotransmitters. One is more on like the motivational action side of driving you towards a process. So it's like anytime you do something that's pleasurable, you get a hit of dopamine naturally, endogenously. And serotonin is that overwhelming feeling of positive mood, safety, security, love, these kind of emotions that are kind of closely linked to serotonin. But all these things, it's very tough to generalize them because they're involved in thousands of complex reactions in the brain.
And GABA is supposed to relax you. It's kind of goes against this. Well, I'll let you explain.
Yeah, I mean, GABA is one of the neurotransmitters that relaxes you. It's something, when you have that glass of wine, that alcohol is a GABA agonist, so it creates more GABA in your brain. That's actually what it's doing. That's what the drug effect is. So you're calmer, you're more relaxed, you're less inhibited. So all of these kind of work together in this cocktail in the brain to create, your waking state. And we really wanted to target acetylcholine because if you want focus and memory and sharpness, you want a nootropic, that's the neurotransmitter to really target. But you also want to, kind of support the other ones as well so they don't get out of balance. And Herpertia serrata is this plant. It's a club moss that grows naturally, and it contains this huperzine A, which is that acetylcholine esterase inhibitor. So we added that. We added some natural raw sources of acetylcholine and then kind of rounded out the formula.
What are some natural?
Alpha glycerylphosphorylcholine, alpha GPC. Okay, so that's the raw source.
I thought you were going to say bananas.
Yeah. So 9 different ingredients all put together, all with a kind of a unique purpose to make this holistic supplement. And then when we tried it, we knew we had something, Rogan and I and all the people did, but we didn't validate it until we went through 2 different clinical trials with healthy populations, actually a standard deviation of IQ above normal. So very difficult to show statistical significance in people that intelligent and that sharp already. But we were able to do that and duplicate it twice with over 80 patients combined in both those studies, with the Boston Center for Memory showing improvements in focus, memory, processing speed. Really a pretty landmark clinical trial for something on healthy individuals.
And what's the difference between Alpha Brain and Alpha Brain Instant?
One is just capsulized. So a capsule takes about 15 to 20 minutes to dissolve in the stomach, the gelatin. The powdered form that you mix in a drink, that just absorbs 20 minutes quicker because you can mix it into a drink and get it. So if you need Alpha Brain in a hurry, like you're starting a podcast and you need it to hit right away, then you mix that in your water and you're good to go.
And if I were to just, I know we're kind of jumping right into the middle of the book, which is on, brain performance, memory, everything. And to your credit, you don't promote Onnit in this book. I think you focus on health and all, and like you go directly to the plant rather than saying, "Hey, buy Alpha Brain." Like you did everything right in this book, which I'm happy about. But we'll talk about Onnit anyway. So this Herpertia plant is an Alpha Brain, which is sold on Onnit. But can I just take Alpha Brain all day long?
You can take it, there's really when you look at the side effects of the clinical trials we did, and also this long history of use, in many cases, thousands of years of use of these different plants in traditional medicine, you don't see any, real warning signs for addictive properties or any side effects. So it's extremely well tolerated, and, all the indications are that it's safe to take pretty frequently. So a lot of people take it every day. I don't. I take it before podcasts. I take it for periods where I need to focus, maybe 3-4 times a week. But
why don't you take it every day?
My brain is already pretty active and pretty focused. And sometimes I like the other, neurotransmitters. Sometimes it's more
GABA.
Yeah, exactly. I would rather have a couple glasses of wine in this day because I'm already so worked up. I'll enjoy my day more if I have a glass of wine. And we talk about that in the book too. This isn't a book just about performing in one aspect, just efficiency in your job or efficiency there. You got to live a life that's worth living. Live a life that's well-rounded, balanced, and includes the things like having a glass of wine or smoking a joint and making love to your lover and playing with your dog and hanging out and also being extremely productive, also meditating, also eating right, also training like a beast. This is the idea that you want to live a life that's fully well-rounded. And that's, I think, one of the great aspects of this book.
Right. And so you talk about from the second you wake up, drink water, do this, do that. We'll get into all that. What I want to start off with though, you first off, if anybody wants your background, you did an excellent podcast with Tim Ferriss. I highly recommend people see that or watch that. They did Tim Ferriss on his blog. It's a video. You talk about your experiences with psychedelics. You actually talk about your meeting with Joe Rogan and describe some of what you described here. I assume you talked about some of this stuff on Gary Vaynerchuk's podcast. What do you think of all these? Aren't doing all these podcasts? Isn't it boring?
It's not, because it's a way to have a great conversation with somebody. Now we're getting to know each other. So that's dope on its own. If this never got released.
I'm in your book. You mentioned me in your book.
Totally. So if for some reason at the end of a podcast recording, and this has happened before, they say, "Oh man, we lost the recording, files got corrupted." I'm not super bummed because I just had a really good uninterrupted conversation with somebody, and I feel like I know them way better after that. So oh, okay, well, we'll have another great conversation. So that's one of the benefits of doing all these podcasts. And then also, there's going to be people out there who haven't met me, and maybe I can be a service to those people. And maybe, something I say will trigger something in their life that'll make them a little bit better. And that's really what I'm here to do. So, I'm really, even though it's been a lot, I've been enjoying it.
And what have you been doing to promote this book?
Podcasts have been the big, overwhelmingly the big thing. I mean, we have a list with Onnit. We have my own personal list. We have the social media, but podcasts have been the big driver.
And I would think going on Joe Rogan's podcast would be, boom, that would be all you need because his podcast is enormous.
Yeah, Rogan doesn't like talking about anything that, he's not in the mood to talk about, and that's, so when he's in the mood to talk about Own the Day, we'll talk about Own the Day. People think that because we're partners that it's just a given that he's going to promote any Onnit product or promote my book or something like that. It's certainly not that type of relationship. We're extremely close friends, but at the same time, he keeps, his work product and just decides at what point and when he wants to talk about whatever. And I don't fuck with that. And so when he gets a chance to read the book and listen to it, he's probably going to listen to it more on audio, more likely than read it. Then, I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about it.
He seems like a big reader, though. He's always like quoting these obscure conspiracy books that he reads.
Miyamoto Musashi and different things. Yeah, he listens a lot. He listens to a lot of audiobooks because he drives a lot, always going to comedy shows and stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So, all right, so let's talk like Onnit, great company. I want to talk about first Fleshlight. Is it okay to talk about that?
Yeah, man. Let's go there.
I'm not putting you on the spot, right? By talking about that?
No, of course.
All right. If I did, we could even cut that out.
There's no spot. Like everything I do, everything I've been about, I'm open about it.
Look, everybody tries business ideas and some work and some don't. So Fleshlight, can you just describe what that was?
Yeah, so that was actually family business that I went into and was assisting on the marketing side. And how it came about, my stepdad, when my mother was pregnant with twins, went out and they said that they couldn't have sex, went out looking for alternatives and some kind of male sex toy that he could use, found that the market was just flooded with dog shit, and so started creating his own. And at first they were these like torsos with these removable parts, but only everybody just wanted the removable parts. So then he was like, aha, people don't want the whole torso. They just want the vagina. So then he put them in like a flashlight canister, called them Fleshlights. And then I came in fresh out of college to help them with their online marketing. And it's not hard to sell a fake vagina to horny men. So I had like a lot of leadway and I got to really, learn on the job.
Like there are ad networks for that dominate all the porn sites and stuff. Did you advertise on that? Like, was it relatively cheap to advertise?
It was super cheap advertising because you're not competing with all of the major ad buyers, right? It's like it's a very small amount of people that have like real, legitimate, tangible products that that they can market. So yeah, the CPMs it's a much different world than dealing with like Facebook ads.
And what would one Fleshlight sell for?
Like $50, $60, something like that.
And it probably costs like what, $10 to make?
It's in that 10, 15 range. I don't really know the cost metrics anymore. It's been quite a while since I've been in that world.
And was your mom okay with him, with your stepdad kind of using this to...
she's super open-minded. I think everybody thought it was funny at first, and then all of a sudden it became the number one selling male sex toy in the world in this little empire. And then I was like, oh wow, this is a legit business.
So funny because you it sounds like a service for the men of pregnant women, which it is. I never thought of it that way,
right.
But I guess that...
Yeah, or anybody who's, unable. There were some really, probably the best part of that job were the heartwarming stories. Like, I can't have sex with my wife because of this reason or this disease or this condition or this thing. And Fleshlight has saved our marriage, because it allows you to experience something that feels akin to sex. So that was like, of all the things that I did while I was there, like that was the only silver lining because a lot of it was awful. Like people think it's, sexy, you get to work in the sex industry. It was terrible. Like going to the AVN show, like I would rather go to absolutely any other trade show. I'd rather go to like roofing and fucking supplies trade show than the AVN show. It's awful.
What's the AVN show?
That's the adult video news. That's where all the porn stars and the sex toys are. I mean, it's just... It's a gnarly place to go.
And why? Like what happens at that show?
Well, you think there's a bunch of beautiful girls and it's all sexy and it's just 99% just sweaty, horny dudes, that are just bustling around there with, hungry eyes looking at everything there. And it's just the whole energy of that space, is something that I'm really happy that, I can leave behind and have completely left behind. And I talk about that a little bit in the book, like, the energy behind, that industry, like there's nothing wrong with the human body. There's nothing wrong with pornography, but it's the energy behind it is often misplaced and often there for the wrong reason. And I think some of that residue bleeds off onto the whole space for sure.
I was almost trying to figure out a joke off of your last sentence, but I'll leave it alone. So when you say it was the best-selling male product, what kind of revenues does it take to become the best-selling male product in that space?
I mean, they were selling millions of units, millions of units. That's for sure. So
That's incredible.
Yeah, it is. It's it's
And
remarkable.
did you guys sell the business or?
It was never my business. So I just helped them out with some of the marketing, and I also had other clients too that I was helping out. So they're still running it.
Okay, great. So then you went from that to Onnit, more or less?
Yeah, well, I had my marketing company, and they were, Flashlight was one of my clients. I had oil and gas. I had a gold mining company. It was like helping investor relations and the website for this gold mining company, Bullion River Gold in Northern California. I had another nutraceutical company. I had a skincare company. I was helping a lot of different industries, but my passion was clearly in this human optimization realm.
Okay, but I want to ask you about that. I'm sorry to interrupt. When you say you were helping, a gold company, oil and gas company, a skincare company, let's take the skincare company. Were you helping them basically place ads cheaply so they could sell and build their product, or what were you doing?
Everything from branding, packaging, website building, the basics of online marketing, digital advertising. I mean, it was kind of it was basically me and one or two other people working together, but we were like a full service kind of mini agency that would kind of consult on all the different fronts. So it depended on the client, but that client was looking to transition, direct to consumer. They did an infomercial, didn't really work, and then they wanted to go online. So we helped them transition into that. So a lot of this stuff gave me some experience to understand how I was going to market. I just had to figure out the products and the ethos that best represented me, that I could go all in on. And that's what Onnit really was. But a lot of the skills I developed, working with all these other different companies, from raising money for some of the gold mining company, because they always needed money because there was never enough gold. And so that skill, to the online retail, to the advertising, to all of these things kind of pushed into Onnit and really allowed it to become what it was. Without all these other crazy clients, including Flashlight, I wouldn't have been able to be the CEO that could really take a company that I loved, that I truly loved, and make it what it is.
I think that's a key thing. It's because many people they're 23 years old, they have this great idea, and they start pitching it around. But sometimes you need kind of that space to try other things, so you build the skill sets you need and really figure out the direction your passions are going. Like, obviously you followed this inner compass to find what you were truly passionate about and start Onnit. But along the way, you had many stops, and you had to kind of, start this company, learn all these different skills, and you had all these other experiences to show you, what was the best way to optimize your day and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to get your ass kicked a little bit. You got to get some experience, the wins, the losses.
What's the worst ass kicking you had during this time?
I mean, everything pretty much was a failure. I would get fired. I was getting fired repeatedly from Flashlight by my family, and then scrambling for
what would happen? Like, your dad would call you in and say,
"Yeah, it just sucks working for your family." Like, it really sucks.
I've done it before. It does suck because you can't break away, but you all learn to hate each other.
Yeah, it was a rough situation. All the other companies, the gold company, the oil and gas company, the pharmaceutical company, they all went to zero. They all went completely under. The skincare company went under. Like, everything I did other than selling these fake vaginas was a total failure. And the selling the fake vaginas was absolutely making me miserable. It was like the last thing I wanted to be doing.
Like, your stepdad would call you into the office, and what would he say? Like, in the worst, during the bad times?
There was one particular moment where, and I don't really want to put him on the spot, but one particular moment where he was kind of fired up, and he was like, said something to the effect of, "This is the best you'll ever do. You'll never be more successful than this." And I just kind of like nodded my head. I was like, "Okay, I hear you. I appreciate you. I appreciate this experience, all the experiences, but we'll see." And I think that was kind of good. At the time it pissed me off, but when I look back, that father figure role of kind of poking you in the chest and being like, "You going to do something about this? You going to do something about this?" And I was like, "I'm going to do something about this." And some of that certainly, carried through. And by now, I don't remember that. And that doesn't fire me up. But at the point, at those dark moments when you're really struggling and it's really hard and your company's not working yet and you're just putting in those burning midnight hours to try and get this thing off the ground. Like Onnit wasn't birthed to success. I languished around for like a year trying to figure it out, trying to come up with Alpha Brain down to our last dollar. Like those moments, just pushing everything in and recognizing that you're not going to have everybody clapping their hands and saying, oh yeah, you got this for sure. You're so good. Some people are going to be really saying, you don't got this, and show up. So
at the time, there was 1,000 nutraceutical companies trying to sell products on the internet, and all of them promising, brain performance or physical performance or sexual performance, whatever. Why did you think you would be able to succeed with it?
Well, just like when my stepdad went out and looked at the male sex toys and found that they were dog shit, I went out and looked at the options for these natural supplements for the brain, and I couldn't feel any of them. Like none of them were convincing. And so I knew there was an opportunity because I would take the individual ingredients myself, and I knew the clinical research when you actually push the dose to a level that you could actually feel. So there was, while it may have looked crowded, it wasn't crowded where we were going, because where we were going was combining the science with something you could actually feel. And no one was doing that at the time. Since then, there's been a couple good products that have come out, stuff that, that you can really feel. So the marketplace is better now and actually more competitive now than when we started. But when we came out with Alpha Brain, that was what blew people away, is like, this is a supplement, but you can fucking feel it,
And you don't just sell Alpha Brain, you sell other things. What are some of the other, because it's all related to this book. We're going to connect it to this book.
You can't just take a supplement and have a optimized life. A supplement is a very narrow thing. It's either covering some kind of deficiency you might have or increasing some level of performance, giving you access to foods or nutrients that might not be available. But that's not it. You got to take the free miracle drugs of the world, like exercise, sex, sleep, light, water, all of these different things. So a lot of what Onnit does is about that information. A lot of what this book does is about that. And then the other tools are having to do with exercise. All right, if exercise is a miracle drug that can literally treat pretty much every known condition to man, what's the best way to take that miracle drug? Well, get back to some of those unconventional roots. Get back to the ways that this human monkey was designed to move, not fixed bar patterns and Cybex machines and all the crazy things we do to try and work out, but get back to some more natural movement patterns, rehabilitate some of the bad habits that we might have gotten into from posture and things like that. And just so that we can, at the drop of a hat, play a volleyball game if it breaks out, or run around the bases in a softball game, or not have to quit having sex because we're too winded to continue, be able to live at bare minimum a life that you want to live.
And you recommend kettlebells in the book, among other things.
Kettlebells, yeah.
Okay, kettlebells. And you show the exercises. And Tim Ferriss also recommends he has a video showing how to use it. And it's similar to some of the exercises that you show. What's the deal with that as opposed to just kind of lifting weights off a bar?
Yeah, so kettlebells in particular, it's like an entire gym that you have in one single piece of equipment, and the way that you can use it through the swings, it allows you to push a maximum load in a minimum amount of time, and in ways that allow you to hinge at the hips, squat patterns, pressing patterns. It's pretty unique in that all of the major movement patterns that you would need to really have a strong structural integrity and a really good workout, you can get with a kettlebell. And it started in Russia as these dry grain measurements, and the strongmen would just lift it to get there, and it became this national sport and now is ubiquitous. Kettlebells are everywhere, and that's for good reason. The movements you can do with a kettlebell, if you had one piece of equipment you needed for the rest of your life, you could do it all with a kettlebell.
And how did you figure this out?
Really, I started training with MMA fighters and with, top, like Bodie Miller was the first investor in Onnit, and Roger Huerta was one of my good friends who was a UFC fighter. And these guys were already onto it early, because they were on the bleeding edge of needing performance. And so they were already messing around with these techniques way before you could walk into your local, Equinox or Gold's and see a kettlebell. They were using them then. And not only that, the more elite were experimenting with things like the steel mace and the steel club and some of these other tools that Onnit has, championed and developed the education systems behind. that are really old tools dating back to the 1200s in some cases. But open up the shoulder girdle, move the body in unique ways that you just can't get access to with a traditional barbell or traditional movements in a gym.
So let's go back to the morning. Let's just start off. You just wake up. You're, as you put it, you're dehydrated because you haven't had a sip of water probably in at least 7 or 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You suggest, as many do, water, like a liter of water, essentially, within the first so many minutes of the day. Let's take us through your day.
Yeah, it doesn't take too much to actually start feeling the effects of mild dehydration. Just a couple pounds of water loss, and you're going to lose at least 1 pound overnight.
Talking about it, I have to drink water.
Yeah, exactly. I just drank some myself. It doesn't take much to get dehydration. That's going to create everything from anxiety, irritability, brain fog, all kinds of things start happening when your water levels drop.
Why don't people know this?
I don't think we're taught the basics. Like, we're learning historical dates and things, but people aren't teaching the human machine. Like, I think from an early educational basis, we need to be taught about the machine that we live inside, and understand the water requirements, the air requirements, how just 6 deep breaths can lower your blood pressure.
Six deep breaths in a certain amount of time, right? You mentioned like 30 seconds.
6 deep breaths in a row. Mm-hmm. There's a Japanese study that 6 deep breaths alone will lower your blood pressure. So anybody can try this at home, try this right now. At 6 deep breaths, you'll experience a state change. But we don't know that. And it's crazy because we breathe all the time, but taking conscious control of your breath will alter your brain state, will alter your thinking pattern, will alter your performance, will alter your cortisol, will alter ultimately your life and longevity. And it's just breathing. So breathing, water, movement, like these are the things that the human being craves. And, right out of the gate, you got to get some of those. You got to get some water. A lot of the water we take is distilled, so it doesn't have any natural minerals in it. So spring water is better, and then sprinkling some sea salt in there is going to be great as well for electrolytes. Lemon for bioflavonoids and flavor. That's kind of my morning mineral cocktail. And then the next thing you got to do is light and movement, because that sets the circadian rhythm for the animal that we are. We're meant to go out of our cave, or when the sun rose up, if we were sleeping on the ground, get that sunlight, start moving, and that sets our day. That sets that hormonal pattern that'll give us energy throughout the day and also make us sleepy at night. So first 3 things when you wake up: hydration with the water, the sea salt, the lemon. Get some light on your body, as much of your skin exposed as possible, and then get moving, any kind of light moving. I like to swim a couple laps. You can play around with your dog. You can just start to get moving, and you'll feel way more alert than just reaching for that first cup of coffee first thing.
Okay, so let's say you work in a factory in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
You wake up and you can drink your water, but there's no light because you got to get to the factory by 5 a.m. and it's Wisconsin. And you're not really going to be moving. You're just going to jump in the car and go. Like, what should that person do?
Well, there's no excuse not to move. There may be
an excuse.
Move
to the car.
Yeah, no, you got to do more. You got to do more than that.
So what's
whatever
like
it is?
something?
Move around a little bit. Do a couple burpees. Do a couple push-ups. Do like some light yoga. I mean, I don't know how popular yoga is in Wisconsin, but I'm sure it is. Whatever you want to do, wrestle with your girlfriend or whatever you want. Anything is possible, but get your heart rate up a little bit, get moving. And that's one of the key, what they call Zeitgebers. That's what sets the circadian rhythm. So at bare minimum, you have to do that. Now, light can be an issue. So there's the biohacky ways to get away from that. And I have something called the human charger that I use on cloudy days, which is light emitting earbuds. So they go in your ears.
I read that in the book. I never heard of that before that.
Yeah.
I always think of light as something you see.
Yeah, exactly. You have photoreceptors in your ears that actually work the same as the photoreceptors in your eyes. So you can put these in, they're like headphones, and you can blast light, and that will really wake you up too and help you feel more alert, set your circadian rhythm. Or even just fluorescent lights that have like the blue light spectrum or any kind of bright lights. You want as white of lights as possible, will start to wake you up, just like they'll keep you up if you're in too many of them at night.
Yeah, I've seen on Amazon, there are these lights that are like super bright that are supposed to help people with seasonal affective disorders, people who get depressed in the winter, that they're bright enough that they'll counteract that.
Yep.
So are those types of lights
Totally.
good?
Totally.
Okay,
Yeah.
so okay, I've started my day. I've had a liter of water. I've did some movement, did how many push-ups? Let's say I'm going to go the push-ups route. How many
It depends
push-ups?
on how strong you are. You just want to do, it's not like a workout. This isn't your morning workout. This is your morning movement. So if you're a beast, maybe that's 25 push-ups. If you're not a push-up guy, maybe it's 5 push-ups. It doesn't matter. It's all relative to you. I don't think there's a comparative goal that anybody should have, but just enough so that okay, I just moved. I just did something,
And then there's the light, getting light. And what does this do? If someone's doing this as opposed to not doing this, what are you going to see after a few weeks, the difference between the two people?
Well, you're going to have way more energy going through and a lot more mental clarity. Mental clarity is going to come from the water and like a more even keel mood from preventing the irritability that comes from the dehydration and the clear thinking that's going to come from that. But from the light and the movement, setting your circadian rhythm, you're just going to have more energy throughout the day and you're going to be able to fall asleep better because you're going to produce more melatonin at night by setting your circadian rhythm early. So you'll be more alert when you need to be alert and more tired when you need to be tired. So you'll be more in line with the Earth's natural rhythm.
All right, and then I get to work. And I want to be as productive as possible.
Well, before you get to work, the next best thing to really jack yourself up as far as alertness and also help drop stress, drop any kind of inflammation that you have is cold exposure and breath. So if you're taking a morning shower, I recommend it in the morning. I think this is one of the best ways to do it, is to take, shower in the warm water and then turn that nozzle all the way cold.
So I've tried, this is the Wim Hof.
Yeah,
Wim Hof method. Where you turn it as cold as possible for like 20, 30 seconds or more. And he's, you mentioned it, you write about him in the book. He climbed Mount Everest shirtless.
Yeah, he's a maniac.
Yeah. I cannot do it. Like it gets too cold. I'm in pain.
Yeah. And, I think the first thing you have to know how good it is for you. You have to know that it increases norepinephrine by like 300%.
What's norepinephrine?
That's a hormone that's actually in counterbalance with your cortisol. So it's going to drop your chronic stress down. When that goes up, it's also going to increase your kind of alertness and awakeness, which is another thing that you want to do in the morning without having to use coffee yet. I'm obviously drinking coffee now. I'm not opposed to coffee, but you want to save that turbo button for later. And then if you combine it with a breath hold, which is also something I recommend, then you're increasing adrenaline as well. So then you're really giving yourself like a natural energy boost. Plus, people who expose themselves regularly to the cold get 42% less respiratory tract infections, according to one different study. So you're going to get sick less, you're going to be less stressed, you're going to drop inflammation, you're going to build cold shock proteins, which are necessary for longevity. You might actually lose weight through some brown fat adipose tissue activation. There's a whole bunch of different values that you get from it. But I think so you have to know that first, know that it's good for you. But the real value is just doing that shit you don't want to do. Like forcing your body in your hand to take that nozzle and turn it to the left counterclockwise, knowing that you're going to be in pain, but knowing that it's good for you, and building that willpower of just being a badass, of being in control of your life.
Okay, I buy into 100% of what you said, but the first time you did it, did you just say, no, this is not for me?
Totally. And I would wrestle with myself, constantly.
Can you go in increments? Can we start off like lukewarm?
Yeah, my fiance tries to do that sometimes. We were actually filming a video and she tried to fake that it was cold by just turning it a little bit chillier. It doesn't work though. You need actual genuine cold exposure. You should really go as cold as it will go.
But how do you get the habit of doing that? Like presumably when you do it now, it's not a big deal to you, or is it still just as painful?
It's become so much more comfortable, the pattern of those deep breaths to kind of get myself ready. And then the body knows how good it feels when you're done. It's kind of like, I liken it to green juices. I used to hate drinking green juices, but now that my body's gotten used to them, I crave them. I love drinking green juices. Same with the cold shower. Now, instead of that fear and anticipation, I'm like, oh, sweet, I get a cold shower because I've linked, what that feeling is after I'm done to the moment before I do it. And so that's been patterned in this kind of Pavlovian response over and over again. So I actually get excited about the cold now. So it's not hard. But at first, hell yeah, it was super hard.
I mean, and this is related to the concept of habit building. Like obviously, this is a habit that nobody really wants to have. Yeah. And so how do you build into yourself? And I understand intellectually you can convince yourself, okay, I really have to do this or life will be worse for me if I don't do this. But how can you really get into the habit of doing it? Because people often don't do the things
Yeah.
that are good for themselves. I mean, there's many studies. People will help other people take their pills, but they won't take their pills for themselves, even if it's a life or death sort of pill.
Yeah.
So how can you build that habit of, and so you said you start off with the 6 breaths, kind of get yourself calm. And then how long does it take of you trying to get it to full power before you were able to be comfortable with it?
You just build off those little wins. And that's why we focus this on one day, because really you can do this one time. You can get yourself psyched up. You can do it. And that's what we're asking for. We're asking for you to link all of these practices for one day. I mean, this one is challenging for sure, but you can do it one time. Like anybody can do it and just get themselves fired up, give it a try.
But, it's like you say in the title, own the day, own your life. So if I buy into this, that this is going to be good for me for the day, I'm going to try to do it for life.
Yeah.
And then if 20 years from now, someone tells me, oh, no, you really needed it like the other direction, I'm going to be really upset. Like I've just been killing myself with this cold water for 20 years. So like you're saying there are plenty of studies, and you quote, you mentioned a lot of examples.
300 clinical and academic references in the book.
All right, I'm going to try it.
Yeah, and that's it. And so build off that win. Maybe it'll be once a week for a while. You'll get fired up. You'll get that practice. You get the courage to do it, and you'll do it once a week. And then maybe it becomes twice a week. But every time you do it, it's like a little victory that you can put in your willpower bank. Like, oh, I remember when I did that. Oh, I remember when I did that. And then it'll become a little bit easier and a little bit more frequent. And you'll just start counting these victories, and that internal ability to do the hard shit, to do the shit that we don't want to do, that starts to flex like a muscle.
So in this case, for people you've advised to do this and for yourself, how long on average do you think it took people to, from the starting point where they said, okay, I really want to do this and I'm going to start every day trying to do this, to the point where they were just saying, oh yeah, I do that every day now?
What ends up happening is people get super fired up when they read the book. Because I speak kind of naturally motivationally. I write kind of naturally motivationally. I try to get people as fired up and meet the objections that they may have in the book. So they'll start right out of the gate and they'll start doing it. And then they kind of drift off and get back to, nah, hardly doing it. And then something will snap where they'll remember like, man, I was really feeling much better when I was practicing that protocol. And so it kind of goes in this, inverse curve where it's like really good adherence after reading the book, slipping off a little bit, and then feeling what that feels like and remembering how good they felt when they were doing it, and then building that back up again.
And you really feel it like it's not like the Ginko Balboa or whatever.
I mean, the studies on Ginko, just quite frankly, are inconclusive. And the studies on cold therapy are undoubtable.
And you feel it.
You feel it. There's no question about it. You finish 2 or 3
later
minutes
in the day.
cold. Oh, hell yeah. You feel it. You feel it right away.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not only the mitochondrial boost that'll benefit your life. You actually feel it, right away. That norepinephrine that kind of floods your body and drops that chronic stress. Like chronic stress is burning us up from the inside. It's like a candle that's lit on both ends and another one roasting the middle. And just all our vital life force is draining. And to have something that can physically drop that load, it's a fucking miracle. And it's cold and it's free and it's in your shower every day. Like, we're not telling you to buy something here. I'm not hawking you some new cold device. It's like available to everybody. Like there's so many free doctors that are available. Like the light, the cold, the heat, sex, movement, sleep, all of these things. They're free as fuck. Like we just got to utilize them. And utilize them in a way that's going to support our organism, and we're going to have a way, way better life.
All right. Well, I mean, I feel like just with that, I'm ready to go.
Own the day, James.
I'm going to own the day. Now, what's next?
Well, this book really sets the foundation for what total human optimization is all about. I feel like this is the missing instruction manual for the human body. Like every one of these chapters has been books, and I referenced these books, and they've all been great. But I haven't seen a place that's like puts it all together. Like the car manual that's in the glove compartment. I feel like that's what this is for the human body and the human mind.
I agree. And that's what we mentioned even before the podcast started. Like I've had a lot of guests on here who talk about, let's say, different types of diets or different types of, areas to live, like the blue zones or different types of exercise routines. I feel this book really does encapsulate from beginning to end. It's not just one thing for better brain performance or better physical performance. But so I think the book, like I said, is the Bible of the day. But it's interesting. Each thing you kind of take a little, have an interesting twist. Like the whole cold shower thing, I really don't want to do it.
Yeah. So there'll be some surprising things in there. Having an honest discussion about nicotine, the discussions
that was
about
another
sex.
interesting thing. So let's talk about nicotine, because nicotine. I once had someone on here who is well known for talking about habits, and one thing he didn't mention was he has nicotine patch, and that is kind of a good way of increasing activity, increasing productivity. It stimulates you in a lot of different ways. So let's talk about nicotine.
Yeah. So first, let's get something straight. Cigarettes will fucking kill you. Like they're death sticks. There's no doubt about that is the absolute one of the worst things you can do for your health. But a lot of times tobacco gets lumped in with cigarettes. Like cigarettes are unequivocally harmful, but tobacco itself has a lot less risk exposure when taken in a different way. And I talk about some of those ways. The patch is one of the cleanest ways, but it's one of the least enjoyable ways to slap a patch on. But there's a company from Sweden that makes this product called Snus, S-N-U-S, and I'm totally unaffiliated with them, but it's a very clean tobacco that you put in your mouth. And the Royal London College of Physicians says it's 10 to 10,000 times less risky than smoking tobacco. Is to take it in smokeless.
In your teeth or breath or anything?
Over time, tobacco will have a yellowing effect. This isn't just something that has no cost at all. It's not like free tobacco, it's good for you, it's healthy. We're not saying that, but we're talking about when you want to utilize a plant as powerful as tobacco that feels potentially as good and can lead to as many dramatic improvements. And I list tons of studies in there, the benefits of nicotine. You want to find the cleanest way to get it in. And this is one of the cleaner ways to get it in. So if you're going to use the plant, and this is a plant you want to use it the right way. So
what about nicotine gum?
That's another way. It's another really clean way, depending on the additives in the gum and depending on what other chemicals they have. But that's another really good way. It's, again, being absorbed through the gum tissue and through the gut, which is going to be a little bit different than smoking. You really just don't want that exposure to your lungs. Like the body is good at taking acute exposure to anything, any kind of stressor, and then recovering. The problem with cigarettes, you're smoking them all day. It's chronic stress to your lungs, and that chronic stress doesn't give you any time to recover. And so you're going to have big problems. Whereas you put in one snooze for 5 or 10 minutes in a day, your body has 23 hours, 50 minutes to recover from that exposure. And it's going to be a lot better than this kind of chronic use that you see from some of the other ways to get
So I take the snooze. What am I going to start feeling?
Well, you're going to start feeling a little heavy. You're going to start feeling a little focused, a little energized, and you're going to feel this kind of euphoric buzz go over your body, and that's when you take it out. Because if you keep it in after that, all of that is going to turn to nausea. And then you're going to wish you never did this, and you're going to be cursing my name. So if you try the snooze, if you try the snooze, as soon as you start feeling it, and you want to spit it out. If you swallow it, it's going to have a more delayed effect. So spit out any of the extra saliva that you get. And, as soon as you start feeling it, take it out and chill and just get used to that kind of feeling. Because if you run it longer than that, you might get nauseous.
And then what do I start feeling?
It feels to me like the stillness that comes from, like, if you went to the bottom, blew out all the air and went to the bottom of a cold pool or the bottom of the ocean, maybe you were spearfishing, just waiting for a fish. And everything in your mind and body gets quiet but yet focused. That's what it feels like. It's one of the most magical feelings that I've felt inside this monkey. And I've done a lot of different psychedelics, and I've done a lot of different drugs. And this, nicotine taken as snooze is one of my favorite experiences. And I use it sometimes to write, and I'll use it in kind of a lighter dose. And sometimes if I'm just dealing with a challenge that I just can't wrap my head around and I got to quiet all the noise and all the voices and all the stress, I'll take it until I get really heavy. And then when I get really heavy, I can start to think a little straighter. Things all seem to make a little bit more sense, and I can open up a little bit more.
So I tend, like for writing, for instance, I tend to use caffeine. So compared to like caffeine.
So caffeine is, something that's actually triggering a hormonal response largely. It reverses tiredness is really what it's doing in the body. It's not actually making you more alert necessarily. It is a little bit with adrenaline and some of those things, but it's actually reversing the tired, undoing the things that are making you tired. So if you feel sleepy, caffeine is the way to go. But if you don't feel sleepy at all, it's going to have minimal effects. It's just going to kind of raise your hormone load. So it's not going to be as effective. So caffeine is absolutely the choice for kind of working late when you're starting to get tired, or if you didn't sleep enough during the day. Caffeine's really going to be effective. Nicotine operates on a different system, actually similar to the acetylcholine system, the nicotinic receptors in the brain. And it just feels very, very different. That's all I can say. I mean, the focus, the alertness, the acuity, but also the psychosomatic feeling of that heaviness descending on your body, and that it's pretty remarkable. It's a pretty remarkable plant.
So let's say I'm doing a cheat sheet of the entire book. I want to pick like 5 things that are just going to like make my day super day. So the easy stuff I could do, I could drink the water, I could take some deep breaths, I could do some moving when I wake up, I can do the light. Then let's say the cold shower, the nicotine, and the alpha brain where I get this nootropic plant. Am I like Superman for the day all of a sudden?
No, you need some few more things for sure. I mean, you need to, and also just to wrap tobacco, obviously it is still addictive. Be mindful of it. Have a good relationship. Make sure you can quit. Don't do something that's driving you. Make sure you're driving it. And that's all I'll say in it. But it can be a pretty positive experience. But yeah, so beyond that, I would say napping is another thing that people are sleeping on. That's something that people aren't really utilizing to the full effectiveness. And when in clinical studies, when compared to more overnight sleep and coffee, napping always wins for mental alertness and focus and performance. So taking like a 30-minute nap, just enough, even if you don't fall completely asleep, but enough to drop your waking state from that normal beta state down to alpha or theta state to give yourself a little bit of a rest mentally, is absolutely huge. One of the biggest things that I've done. So I think that's a really important move. I think, and then of course it's just back to those free doctors. Are you getting enough sex? Are you getting enough exercise? Are you getting, enough connection with people? I think that's another thing. Like loneliness is one of the biggest killers for people who are older in age. They're just not with people, and we're tribal creatures, and you asked about where I was going next. So this is the foundation for the body and mind. Where I'm going next is, what about the heart, and what about our connections with, other people? And I touch on that a little bit in this book, and some of the stuff on relationship and some of the stuff on community. But that's also it should be part of every day, whether it's a friend or whether it's a loved one or whether it's a pet or whether it's whoever. Like, we got to connect with each other. We got to connect with ourselves. We got to really spend time doing the things that we love to do about life, not just doing the things that are going to get us to some mythical place somewhere in the future that we think we'll be happy when we get to.
What do you think, just speaking of loneliness, what do you think is the right amount of, this sounds like a naive question, but what do you think is the right amount of friends one should have? Like close friends?
I think that's a tough thing to say, because to really have a close friend, you got to make that intentional. You got to kind of choose some things that you guys can go through together and really see each other, whether that's a workout or whether maybe it's a psychedelic medicine journey, or maybe it's going to Burning Man together or taking a trip, or
I hate all of these things.
Yeah. Or, whatever it may be. Like really to get to know someone, get to know them not only on the physical, superficial, but get to know their soul, get to know what makes them cry, get to know what makes them laugh, get to know where their deepest fears are, and like see them truly for who they are. That takes some time, and that takes some stillness, and that takes some patience. And I think those relationships have a disproportionately valuable reward to your life. So, I have a lot of different people who I spend time with, but I'm really personally in my own life, doubling down on those that are closest to me so that I can really evolve these friendships to a state that mimics what an ancient, tribal setting would be like, where it's no longer, I'm talking about me, I'm talking about our, and it feels like this is my tribe. We're all fighting together. We're all in this together. We're all working together. Like, those are the relationships that I crave.
And, Onnit's doing well. This book is almost certainly going to be a bestseller. I think you're doing the right thing, marketing on podcasts as opposed to the traditional book tour. Plus, I really do think this is so incredibly valuable to sort of summarize each portion of the day and kind of the way to optimize it. Because you're right. Sometimes you want to be super productive and like your brain stimulated and your heart pumping in a certain way. Other times you want to relax and kind of ease into a good sleep. I mean, maybe we could talk about that for a second. What's your best way of relaxing?
Well, the best way of relaxing is I have a journaling practice that I think is really important. Like, get the stuff that's in your brain on paper so you can leave it from rattling around in your brain and just kind of outsource it as your external hard drive. So let's imagine it's like a bunch of swarming bees of thoughts, put it back in the little beekeeping unit, which is your journal, and allow it to be there. And you can pick it back up, open it up in the morning, but get it out of your head, get it on paper so you don't have to keep rattling around with it. And that really helps.
Like, let's say you're angry at your girlfriend. You're feeling some...
Wow, that's never happened.
Well, yeah, what do you do?
I journal. And
that just gets it. Instead of like calling her up and saying, why'd you say that?
Well, no, sometimes I do that stupid move and then that, and I always regret it because a lot of times sometimes these are things she can help me with, but a lot of times this is my own shit. This is something that's coming up for me that I would be better served working out myself. Because the problem is you dump all of these emotions onto somebody else. Maybe they help you with it, but then they've had to deal with this wave of shit that you've just thrown on them. So then you have to spend the next few days cleaning up the shit that you splattered on them. And then maybe they splatter some back. It's always pays to do as much work as you can yourself first, rather than dumping it on someone else that you love and then having to play this constant game of back and forth.
Like, I remember, I think it was on Tim Ferriss's podcast, you guys talk about The Mastery of Love by Don Miguel Ruiz.
Yeah.
And he mentions in that book, never good to outsource your self-esteem and it's hard enough for everybody to keep track of their own self-esteem, let alone yours. And so that's essentially what you're describing there is like, you kind of have to deal with your own self-esteem issues.
You really do. Any type of validation that you're trying to get externally is ultimately going to be unsatisfying.
But I feel like a lot of these techniques in the book, like, again, that cold shower thing is just an example, that kind of helps you
totally
build the ability and maybe the journaling and maybe, some of these. And by the way, I also want to mention a big part that we've been skipping is you have a lot of recipes in here. You have a lot of, diet suggestions and so on. I feel people can just read that and get the idea.
Totally.
But it seems like a lot of these things about health really contributes to how you emotionally deal with life as well. I mean, that's kind of the point, is that it's
Agreed.
all holistic.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, that move of turning your hand counterclockwise in the shower is the same move of holding yourself back when you're going to say something shitty to a friend or say something shitty to your loved one. Like, it's the same willpower that says, all right, let me take those 6 breaths first. Let me go for a little walk first. Let me hold back and deal with as much of this as I can before unloading it on someone. It's the same thing. It's that mental willpower to know what is best and actually follow through on it. And that's when you really need it. The shower is going to be helpful, but the shower is going to help you practice for that time when you don't blow up in that board meeting, or you don't blow up at your spouse, or you don't blow up at your kids, or it's all part of that same process. You just have to learn it in ways that you can train and then apply it universally wherever you can.
So in addition to this book, what 5 books would you recommend people read and learn from?
Well, I think you mentioned one. I think Don Miguel Ruiz's Mastery of Love is an incredible book.
And I'll lump it in with The 4 Agreements. That's a great book.
That's a great book too. You Are the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza. Okay. That's an incredible book. It shows the extent to which the mind has control over the body. And I think I talk about it a bit in my book, but I think really getting the full science behind the placebo effect and the nocebo effect and how that affects you, I think that's pretty remarkable. I think Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth, is one of the books that I give away.
Just saw him speak around the corner.
Oh, yeah? Yeah? Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
It was very interesting.
Yeah, I felt like The Power of Now is very dense and a little bit repetitive, but I feel like in A New Earth, he really hit his stride and covers like a broad scope.
There's also, it is less popular, but I think it's called Practicing the Power of Now, which I think was actually the original Power of Now book. And then the Power of Now became more popular, but it has more of specific techniques.
Yeah. Awesome. I would say Aldous Huxley's Island.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that in this book.
Is another one. That to me really opened my eyes to how you could reimagine these different social constructs that we just take for granted and then come up with, your own utopia, because it's a utopian novel about this society that lives away from the mainstream and how they've created their own rituals, created their own way of living. And that's really been effective in helping me kind of breathe into and imagine what my future wants to look like as well. How much utopia I could build into my future life. That's been great. And I'd say the last book is Sex at Dawn by Dr. Chris Ryan. And that book really opened my eyes to human sexuality and what the root of that is. And that's,
people keep recommending that book to me. I haven't read it. What's the main premise?
Well, the main premise is that we are less like, chimps or gorillas, where there's a male, an alpha male, who fights all the other alpha males to have the mating rights for all of the females, and more like the bonobos, where everybody just kind of wants to have sex with each other. And, he goes through the anthropological evidence for that and really kind of opened my eyes to human female sexuality. And this, there's this kind of male, like, bull paradigm where the prize bull gets all the heifers and that's the way it should be. And it's really not who we are on a DNA level, and it's not who we are, when we're actually left to our own devices in the anthropological records. When you really go back to tribal living, we're more about sharing, we're more about experiencing things together, including sexuality. So really shifted the fundamentals of how I thought about human sexuality.
Well, Aubrey Marcus, CEO of Onnit, I highly recommend people check out the website, particularly after I try Alpha Brain. I'm really looking forward to trying Alpha Brain and some of the other stuff on the site. But this book is really a great book. Own the Day, Own Your Life. I highly recommend it. I am going to try basically stuff from every single chapter in this book.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Starting off with the cold shower thing. I'm gonna
go for it. Get it.
6 deep breaths beforehand to get myself ready. I've tried it before. It didn't work.
Yeah, you can even up the amount of deep breaths. You can bring that up to 30 if you really want to be, kind of ready for the cold.
All right, I'm gonna try it. And if you're wrong, I'm coming hunting for you.
Come find me.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks, James.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. oracle.com/advance.